Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Matthew Struck with the Agents and Brokers Interest Group coming at you again with another profile of an agent or broker. We are honored today to have our current interest group chair, Brian Taylor, with us. Brian, thank you very much for taking the time to do this.
My pleasure, Matt.
Oh,
I like your style.
Yeah, I try and make this as official as possible. But yeah, no, it's a pleasure to have you. I think I have a lot of respect for anyone who volunteers for a unpaid leadership position like you have with the interest group. But we'll get into that. Before we get rolling, I just want to kind of give everyone a little bit of a background on who you are and where you come from. So we know your name is Brian Taylor, but where do you live? What do you do? And who are you?
Okay. Well, first of all, I live in Louisville, Kentucky. Have born and raised here, and only left long enough to go to college, and came back. Raised a family. Now enjoying grandchildren, and so I'm officially retired, but I serve as a consultant and a writer. Or at least that's the title that's on my business card right now. I've been in that position for about 2 years now, since retiring in 2018. My last gig was owning an Allstate agency.
All right.
And I sold that at the end of Q4 17 and stayed on for Q1 of 18 to help the new owner. And let's see.
So you mentioned you went to college. Where'd you go to college?
I went to Hanover College in Hanover, Indiana. Okay. Graduated with a BA in history. And then I got my MBA from Bellarmine University here in Louisville. And I got my CPCU designation in 1980.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you've been a CPCU for 39 years now.
40 years.
Wow. That's incredible. That's, I would say, that's like, how should I put it? That's like being someone who is, the vessel by which, like, an association like this, a lot of the knowledge of the association is distilled within people with varying, lengths of kind of involvement. You're the person that can tell us what it used to be, and I love the fact that you majored in history. What really drew you to history?
Well, it was kind of funny. I was I was in the second term of my sophomore year at Hanover. Mm-hmm. And as part of the required courses at that time for a liberal arts degree, I had to take a course in history. Right. And I was very fortunate to have Dr. Robert Bowers, who at that time was the head of the history department at Hanover College, as my professor. And I took 20th century American history from Dr. Bowers. Okay. And I became interested in history probably when I was 12 years old, because that would have been the centennial of the Civil War. And there was an awful lot going on around that time. And then a lot of the men that my father worked with, he spent 49 years in journalism. A lot of the men that he worked with were World War II veterans. So between the Civil War and World War II, I had a personal connection with both in terms of family members and, multiple generations and so on and so forth. But when I got to Hanover and I was casting around for, what am I going to make my major? I took that course from Dr. Bowers and I was hooked. Okay. And that's and it's been a lifelong avocation for me, Matt. And I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed it. And I have particularly enjoyed my background, especially the last let's say 3 to 5 years and the last 3 to 5 months, because the history I learned informs a lot of what I am doing now, from taking a new perspective on American history, and a lot of the things that are going on, good and bad, in America and around the world right now.
That's an interesting point. I was never really a history person growing up. I was always a math and science nerd. So, that's really kind of what took precedence. What was the problem that was in front of me at the very moment in time, and kind of how to figure that out. I haven't really developed a appreciation for history until recently within my life, the last 5, 10 years. So I feel like I'm scrambling, right? So like you mentioned all the stuff that's happening in the world today. I mean, we're doing this video interview during, the COVID-19 pandemic. We have, racial tensions that are, they've been there for a long period of time in this country's history, but they're, coming to a head, or, have had a breaking point recently, along with a number of other things. I mean, just the presidency of Donald Trump and that transition of power from Obama to him
Right.
is a major historical kind of moment or pretext in time. So I find myself kind of retroactively having to go back and saying, like, I'm always asking myself, well, what were things like, right? I think you really fall potentially victim to not truly understanding history, or if you didn't do a good job of gathering that historical knowledge, just kind of taking someone else's word for it on belief that they knew exactly what happened. So I think that's really interesting. I mean, from your perspective, I think one of the big questions that a lot of people are asking themselves and asking others is, what is this pandemic specifically going to have in terms of the effect on the country and effect on the world? I mean, have you seen things in your historical studies that kind of make you think of, where we've come from and what that might telegraph for the future?
Well, I think in my lifetime, no. I think this era is unprecedented. Now, within recent American history, of course, there was the pandemic of 1918. And unfortunately, you hit the nail on the head in terms of those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it.
Yep.
And I think that's an excellent example of what's going on right now in terms of this pandemic, is we've already been through this once. And a lot of lessons were learned, and somewhere along the line, those lessons were lost and or forgotten, I guess. And I just think that you spoke about the racial tensions and whatnot. Here again, I don't think our current times are unprecedented in our history in terms of race relations. What I think is different at this point in time is a significant portion of the population, that being the white population, is beginning to understand that there is a lot more. This is not just black and white. There's an awful lot of gray and nuance in this. And until you begin to understand that, I don't think we can begin to understand fully what Black people or people of color, period, in American history have been through. We've seen it from one perspective. Yeah. And I think that's really important that we widen that perspective.
Yeah. Now, kind of get a little bit more granular in terms of the insurance industry. We've been having a lot of conversations about, whether it be, whether pandemic is covered under business interruption coverage, right? We've been talking about issues related to diversity and inclusion within an industry that's basically as old as America is, actually even older than America is, right? And what role that has to play in the future of how we kind of execute on the business of insurance.
Right.
are you at the very least positive, coming from where you came from to see kind of the conversations that we're having and where we're headed?
Well, oh yes, I am very positive in that regard. I think one of the things that our industry has done a great job over the almost 50 years that I've been in the industry is that we learn to adapt, and the old Marine motto, U.S. Marine motto: improvise, adapt, overcome. The industry has done, I think, uh, not necessarily as fast as some people would like, but it always has done a pretty good job of improvising, adapting, and overcoming in terms of evolving with current trends. The only thing that bothers me at this point in time about the future, and especially with COVID and the coverage issues that you just raised, is I am very concerned about the toxic political, legal, and regulatory environments that we find ourselves in right now.
Yeah.
And it is going to take a tremendous amount of hard work, goodwill on the part of all parties, and a turning away from those toxic environments, in order to be able to do what's in the best interests of our country, our society, and our industry, quite frankly.
I got to be honest. I love hearing that from you, because I think that is extremely poignant, coming from that kind of like math and science. Like, let's understand the root of the problem, or the root cause of the problem.
Right.
So much of these, so many of these issues, there are great solutions, but they're never going to be realized unless we actually come together and can, pull apart the more diversive, just the more diversive means by which we communicate and interact, right? So if we can find a constructive way to communicate and interact, I think we can fully realize the true potential of those things that are floating out there that everyone's talking about.
Yeah.
To that point, I think, and you can correct me if you think I'm wrong, I think the insurance industry has done I mean, there's more work to be done, obviously, but has done a pretty good job in the past of not getting too political, at least internally. We always have to deal with a very regulated industry, working in insurance, but not getting too political internally, right? So I think, one of the things that we were talking about before COVID-19, and is kind of an undercurrent of COVID-19, is global warming, pollution, air pollution, that kind of dynamic. I mean, the insurance industry was already reacting to that, because they said, you know what, regardless of whether it's man-made or not, it's going to affect housing, insurance rates in the future. It's going to affect, business, commercial insurance rates in the future. Let's act now so that we're not behind the eight ball. Has that been your experience too? I mean, have you found the insurance industry to be, as much as is possible, kind of, tried to stay rational and neutral and kind of intentional, as opposed to getting hyper politicized and everything like that?
No, I couldn't agree more, and I think the industry deserves credit for that. Quite frankly, that it doesn't very often get. No, when I referred to the toxic political and legal and regulatory environments that we find ourselves in right now, I'm talking about more external forces, that have, if you will, won points for themselves with their constituencies by targeting the insurance and risk management industry.
So you'd say state legislators telling insurance companies they should just pay for business interruption losses is probably not a good thing, right?
You're in New Jersey, right?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, I believe New Jersey's legislature has done something to that effect already.
we were one of the first ones. I think it's always tough to figure out what's a hollow talking point with no momentum behind it, and what's actually gonna result in some kind of regulatory change. I think for the most part, it's been somewhat just people kind of like talking and not necessarily doing very much. So I think yeah, I think cooler heads are somewhat prevailing, but it's going to be really interesting to see some of these court cases, how they turn out with respect to coverage, because I think some of those other things that you could probably speak more to than I could in terms of how courts have become politicized. I think that's going to play into this to a large extent.
Yeah.
Yeah. I you know what, I can't remember a time. Can you remember a time in this country's history where not even just Supreme Court justices, but just court justices in general, that we ever had to talk about, like, well, they're a liberal or they're a conservative, and so we have to come at the case from this standpoint? I mean, have you ever seen it as bad as it is now in terms of us talking about our judicial system and how that plays out?
I can only speak for, for the time that I've been cognizant of the state, local, state, and federal judicial systems. But no, I do not recall a time, at least in my lifetime, when it has gotten this political. Now, obviously, there are many times in American history where there was exactly that problem. And, the long and short of it is they might get it wrong in the short term, but in the long term, it kind of evened out. Martin Luther King once said, the arc of history is long, but it bends toward justice. And that's one thing we have to keep in mind, is that, the arc's long, but it'll hopefully continue to bend toward justice.
It'll get there eventually, right?
Eventually, yeah.
Yeah. That's a positive outlook. I think we get so hemmed into the here and now, and what the right choice is right now, and yeah, I think the success of this country is that we've had people that were able to disagree vehemently over time, but somehow we just kind of like, bump around in the dark to find our way, right?
Sure.
Yeah. So to kind of backtrack a little bit, I mean, you went from history as a passion and as something that you trained in.
Right.
How does that find you to the world of insurance? I mean, why wouldn't you have become a teacher or a professor somewhere?
Well, it was real simple. I was looking for work after college. I'd figured out what my major was and what my passion was all about. But the economy was in the tank at the time. And so I did something I'd never done before. I responded to a classified ad of the Aetna Casualty and Surety, which is not even around anymore. But at that time, they were one of the big five casualty and surety groups in the states, and their local office was hiring management trainees, quotes and close quotes. And I answered the ad, interviewed, was hired, and we were off to the races. So
Awesome.
I fell into it quite by accident.
Yeah. And so now I'm used to responding to employment ads in my life. What was management trainee code for?
It was code for we need underwriting boots in the streets. And our company is primarily an underwriting company. And if you get that part of it right, we'll provide you with a career path in terms of developing managerial skills. So you are, in effect, a management trainee.
That's good. That's good. So, what was your experience like when you first got into insurance? I mean, was it something where it kind of, it just seemed that you fit right at the beginning, or I mean, what was that path like?
Well, I think the big issue for me was, first of all, I'd never imagined myself in the insurance business. But
I don't think anyone does.
yeah, uh, yeah, I was going to say, I'm not sure my career path is that unusual in this
Yep.
business. Um, but I found it extremely challenging, and it was kind of a whole new world for me. And obviously, there was a tremendous amount of history behind as you alluded to earlier. The industry is older than our country,
Mm.
so that was a part that appealed to me. But I guess I probably didn't know it at the time, but the parts that appealed to me the most was the order and making order out of chaos
Mm.
and writing business. One of my early trainers, who was a senior underwriter at the time, told me the only question you have to answer every day is, can I make money by writing this account? And we had our guidelines and whatnot, but this early mentor, if you will, uh, was telling me, okay, we've got the guidelines, we've got our rules and rates and regulation and so on and so forth. But when it comes down to putting your stamp on that piece of business, that's the last question you have to answer for yourself is, can I make money writing this business? And he said, you'll develop that over time. And that was really appealing to me.
Yeah.
It's not just checking things off of a list. At some point or another, it's learning from experience,
Right.
and training and education, kind of the ins and outs of the business. So I think that's what probably appealed to me the most at the start.
Mm. Would you say that that's analogous to, uh, blending blending the art with the mechanics or the science of the
Yeah,
job?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, and I think anybody you talk to in our business now will tell you, yes, there's a lot of science behind it, but there's also art to it,
Mm.
and I think that's that the science part appealed to me, but the art from the standpoint of the creativity really appealed to me as well.
Yeah. So to that end, so you came into the industry underwriting risk, right?
Right.
You left the industry basically attracting risks to write, right? Um, I mean, what was your? I mean, you don't have to have a favorite, but I mean, I mean, what was your arc to get to that point? I mean, was it something where you felt like you had mastered one and now you wanted to see how the other half, myself being a broker, we refer to the carrier side as the dark side. I think on the carrier side, they refer to the broker side as the dark side. Um, what attracted you or got you in that direction of going to see how the other half lives, so to speak?
Well, I had had a number of jobs over the years, putting myself through school, and the underwriting desk, and I mean, I even spent some time in the commercial marketing department. And I was basically the liaison between the company and their appointed agents and their brokers.
Mm.
But because of my work experience over the year, I've always really had a curiosity about how things work.
Mm.
And it was great being on the desk. But once I got out into the field and I saw what agents and brokers were doing in terms of attracting clients and retaining clients and helping clients, that's where the light bulb kind of went off. And I said, I want to I want to be that. I want to do that type of thing. So that's how my brokerage agent/broker career started.
Yeah.
Was moving from the company side to an agency.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think I think a lot of folks who don't walk a day in the life of an agent or broker, they have, I guess, the preconceived notion that it's just sales. That's all it is. Here's a widget. Here's a sell sheet of people. Match them up. Try and close as many deals as possible. I think look, there are some corners of the industry that are like that, and a lot of those corners are becoming automated by some of the insurtechs and things like that are out there. But
Yes.
really beyond that, and I think you're cut from the same cloth as I am. um, it, you know, Brokers and risk managers that are out there in the field, they're legitimately trying to, like, so to speak, lead the horse to water and make them drink, right? You're trying to bring your client, not just to attract them as a new client, but the way you're attracting them is being, by saying, look, you have an exposure here. You could, you know, shore up your operations and make them a little bit more resilient, or protect yourself from an interruption here. Um, I love that aspect of the job that I get to do every single day, and that you had the ability to do. Did being an underwriter first help you in your role as a broker?
Yeah, absolutely. Having walked in the shoes on both sides of the transaction, um, now there was a third set of shoes that I had not walked on and or walked in, and that was the client side. But I think between my experience on the underwriting side, the marketing side, and then on the brokerage side, it really informed that ability to help clients. And I've often been asked, what was the most rewarding part of your brokerage career? And it's very simple. Seeing the results of programs that we created through science and art, and the effects that those programs had for our clients and their stakeholders. And it was you alluded to it earlier. You said something to the effect of um, you could shore up your operation here, or have you thought about this exposure? And to be able to see the final result of that effort and all that hard work as a team was extraordinarily rewarding.
Yeah, yeah. No, I haven't had the pleasure of working for a carrier as an underwriter. I have run a couple of programs, where underwriting, or trying to make sure that you had the right mix of clients was crucial to the success of the program. So I appreciate both sides of that transaction, from the standpoint that if one or the other is broken, like, it obviously doesn't work, right? Like, you're never going to be successful. And the truth of it is that the fallout, when that relationship, or that kind of duality within making that business work, breaks down, yeah, it affects the broker, it affects the carrier, but who it really affects is the client, right? So, at the end of the day, I mean, it's a very altruistic walk of life. As far as, like, education and personal development,
Mhm.
the CPCU, we both look at it as kind of that pinnacle designation, right? That thing that you can get within the industry to say, look, I'm part of the top 3, 4, 5% of people that do what I do. What really pushed you in that direction, or inspired you to really go down the road of getting the CPCU?
Well, I think, well, to be perfectly frank, what got me started on the path
Mhm.
was, I think, 1980. The conferment or the annual meeting was going to be in Hawaii.
Yeah, that helps.
I thought to myself, gosh, if I lay this lay this track out and follow it, stick to it and follow it. I could take my wife and we could go to Hawaii and, get our, go through the conferment and, but have a good time at the same time. But I think I was very lucky in having a couple of instructors. At that time, the local CPCU Society chapter had a number of experienced agents and brokers who took on, and educators who took on the responsibility of holding classes. We met for 3 hours a night for 13 weeks.
Wow.
3 hours one night a week for 13 weeks. And of course, we had an awful lot of homework to do and everything else. But these guys were inspirational, and I think it changed from the initial motivation of getting to Hawaii, which, by the way, never happened, but that's a story for another time.
Yeah.
But I began to understand that this was going to add so much more to my ability to help clients, help carriers, help myself in terms of putting together good programs for all concerned. And it started out with a very selfish motivation. It wound up with what I consider to be an altruistic motivation.
Mm. No, I'm sorry that you didn't get to go to Hawaii. Which conferment did you end up going to?
I never did.
Oh, really? Okay.
At the time, well, see, at the time, the company, it's a really long story. I'll give you a 30-second summary.
Yeah.
The company I worked for at the time, Marsh & McLennan, would pay to send you to the annual meeting, pay for you and your spouse, including airfare, to go to the annual meeting. The guy that was head of the office at the time in Louisville was somewhat of a penny pincher. And so I got my designation, and I applied for annual meeting, and I applied for the grant, that would allow me to go to Hawaii. And he said, I'm not going to do that. That's a head of office decision. And I told him, I said, look, Marsh does this. Yeah, but they're leaving the decision up to me. And at the time, I wasn't smart enough to figure out, it's got to be somebody further up the line.
Yeah. I kind of have not necessarily a similar experience. I didn't make it to my conferment either. I was one of those people who I didn't really care too much, I guess, about where the conferment was. The year I got my designation, we were in Sacramento. So I wasn't really in love with the location or anything like that. I didn't end up going because of scheduling. My company would have paid for it, just for me, not for my spouse.
Yeah.
But I just, it was during a time period during the year where we just had a ton of work to do, and I couldn't justifiably, leave. I can say that it was probably a blessing in disguise that I didn't make it to the first conferment, because the next time that I did go to an annual meeting, it wasn't for my conferment. It was to legitimately, dive into the organization and be a contributor and get involved. So I think, not that wouldn't have come to pass, had I gone to Sacramento, but I think it definitely reinforced for me, that the annual meeting was, it's nice. I mean, your first year, you get lauded over by, the elder statesmen and then the more seasoned people that have been there. You get congratulated by everyone and patted on the back, and you're part of the cool kids club. But I think the the collection of people that are there that aren't just the new designees, the people that are the lifers, the people that are the movers and shakers. I'm stuck for another environment where I find people that are of as high quality and, as I guess revolutionary within the industry as that. So if you didn't make it to Hawaii, right? What really kind of got you involved in the society, right? So anyone who's watching, there's a distinction, right? You can get the designation, which is the letters after your name, and then there's the actual CPCU society that has chapters and ongoing events throughout the year. What really kind of like got you involved in the organization part of it?
Well, it was really funny. Several of the folks that I had gone through various classes with
Mm.
had gotten their designation before I did. And as new designees, had immediately gotten involved in the local chapter. And when I got my designation, they actually came to me and they said, a lot of the guys that were teaching us are, rolling out now. Not so much on the educational part of it, but on the chapter side of it, from the standpoint of leading the chapter and organizing events and so on and so forth. And so they said, us newbies, we really do need to get involved. And I was lucky that, a couple of those folks, actually two of them were from Kentucky Farm Bureau. And they said, we really need some help. So I got involved in the local chapter. I served as president, I think, in the chapter year of '83, and then just stayed involved, not formally but informally, until later in my career.
What's the one or two things that you've really gotten out of the society piece of it, right? The organization or the community. What's that really kind of brought to you, either professionally or personally through your involvement?
Well, I think you mentioned earlier about going to annual meetings and being in a very special atmosphere of professionals. Our code of ethics, part of being a professional is putting the interest of others above your own. And I think that's, not only in your relationship with clients and carriers, but your community in general. And that's, I think, the strongest message I took away from my involvement, or have taken away from my involvement in CPCU. Number one, you're involved in a very, I hate to use the word elite, but a highly qualified group of people in this industry. And they have subscribed to the same code that you have. And that means an awful lot to me. And I think it's probably been besides the career help and the experience and whatnot, that's probably been the biggest thing I've taken away from my involvement with the society.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, in a world where there's so many different options nowadays, especially because, digital platforms like this and other kinds of digital offerings that are out there that, profess to give you more expertise or virtual coaching or things like that. Those are good, how should I put it? Those are good like space fillers, right? If you're completely distanced away from everyone and you just can't meet personally, or if you're in a situation like a pandemic where you have to meet remotely or something like that, or if you're just getting started and you need a little bit of a taste, I think those all do a fantastic job of filling that space. What I've not found is too many. There's a couple, but what I haven't found is too many organizations, that or just even business endeavors that fill the space that the society fills. And like you said, it's the people, right? It has very little to do with the letters. Like getting the letters is your ticket to dance, so to speak, your ticket to box. But it's really the brain trust that's in the group once you get involved in it. And you're a perfect example of that, in that you are that institutional knowledge of the past and how things have evolved. And then you have the young peppy little kids that they're 22 years old, straight out of college, first job. They get incentivized to get a designation, they get into the society, and they're raring to go. They bring another added element to it in terms of the fire and the energy and things like that. So I think it's an amazing organization. If you had to go ahead.
Well, no, sorry for interrupting, but I will never forget a line from the commencement speaker's address at my graduation ceremony at Hanover College. And he basically said, ladies and gentlemen, in a few minutes, you are going to get your diploma and you are going to have letters behind your name as a result of what you've accomplished over the last 4 years. Now, this is not the end. What you've been given is a license to hunt. And that is hunt for experience, hunt for further knowledge, hunt for a way to have a positive effect on your community and those people around you, whether or not it be personal or community or business. Yeah. But this is not the end all and be all. This is the start. And I have felt that way every time when I completed my CPCU and when I completed my MBA. Okay, that's great. Letters are great and everything else. But the most important thing is, okay, this is a new start.
Yeah.
And go from there. Make it worthwhile.
I love that. I love that. I don't know if I'll ask you about your favorite movies here as a follow up to this, but have you seen Ford versus Ferrari? Have you seen that movie yet?
Yeah,
it's fantastic, right? So
it's got two of my favorite actors in it to start with. So
yeah, you start at a high level, right? Like just that story is incredible. The amount of engineering and testing and hard work just to get the machine to the starting line, right? That's your education, right? Like that's the learning part of it.
Yeah.
Once the flag drops and you start the race, that's the performance part, right? And you've been in the performance part for 4 decades or so. I'm working on my going to get into my second decade of the performance part, right? But I think to anyone who is looking at getting the CPCU, what would your advice be? I mean, it's not easy, right? Like it's 8 tests. It's a little bit easier in terms of the mechanics, right? We're kind of virtual now. They can go through a more virtual platform. They don't have to do long form written answers anymore. Right. But it's still an undertaking. I mean, what would your advice be to them?
I do it now. Do it right now. Because you will not believe what it will do for your knowledge and your confidence and your ability to really help people and organizations. And by doing those first 3 things, you will really help yourself. So my 3 words: do it now.
That's a great message. I love that. All right. So for the more squishy, feely part, I was talking about movies. What's your favorite movie?
Well, someone asked me, what's your favorite movie and what's your favorite book? Mm-hmm. And my response is, there are so many of both that the only way I can answer is the latest movie I've seen, which is The Green Mile, which I saw again 2 nights ago for the umpteenth time. Mm-hmm. And my favorite book is Grant by Ron Chernow. Um, Especially now in the racial and societal upheaval that we have in America. Um, Grant is Ulysses S. Grant is a very underappreciated figure in American history. And Ron Chernow, it's a long read, don't get me wrong, but Chernow catches you in that first 2 or 3 pages and doesn't let you go.
Yeah.
And he really brought out how much of what we are trying to accomplish right now in terms of race relations. U.S. Grant was absolutely dedicated, not only through his war service in the Civil War, but his 2 terms as U.S. president. And it's Chernow goes on at the end to, kind of say, okay, well, this legacy of Grant was undone by, this political force and that political force and so on and so forth. But anyway.
No, that's fantastic. I think the life and times of you threw out the one MLK quote, within the realm of how you get things changed. Like, how do you change the minds of people, or not necessarily like change it, but how do people change their minds over time? Very much it's a complex question, right? Like, you can't just snap your fingers or flip a light switch, right? And so sometimes people can argue that we get a little heavy-handed with legislation or flippant extreme acts in order to like try and fix something that really does take a long period of time. I think one of the quotes I keep coming back to, and it's not to give anyone license for being lazy or not knowledgeable or anything like that, but there's a Lincoln quote that I keep coming back to, and to paraphrase it, it basically says, like, you can't hold people at fault for at the very least the perspective they have based off of the world that they live in, right? Now, it's their duty as if they want to be a well-rounded person within society, to reach out and find the additional information that lies beyond, right? Like, to experience things from a different perspective, or travel, or read, right? And so I think that's the big equalizer, so to speak, and I think we've gotten away from that,
I
but
couldn't agree more.
yeah, and things like this, I think, go a long way. This video recording goes a long way to also, just not to diminish the big issues that we've been talking about, but even the small issues in terms of, something that we did a recording for recently in terms of insurance agents and brokers getting insurance designations. It's there are misnomers and wives' tales and derisions that are thrown at people that have a CPCU, right? Like, my contemporary, when I was coming up where I worked at before founding Treadstone, used to say, like, I see someone's business card and they got all these letters after their name, and I'm wondering what they're compensating for. Like, can they actually do the job, or are they just trying to convince you that they can, right? But yeah, no, I think stuff like this goes a long way, and reading books or watching historical movies are an important piece of that. So I love that. Now I have to go back and do my research on Grant to see what I think I know and what I completely didn't know, right?
Well, Ron Chernow, before he wrote Grant, wrote a book on Hamilton.
Okay.
And Lin-Manuel, oh God, I just
Miranda, is that his last name?
Yes.
Yep.
Hamilton, the stage play.
Yeah.
That's where he got his inspiration from.
Mm.
And there's an awful lot of Hamilton in the stage play Hamilton, but there is so much more to him that you see on that. And so, I hope that got people interested in. I don't know if anybody, if Lin-Manuel Miranda will ever do anything in terms of, grant, but
Yeah.
I hope it gets people interested enough to read the full story of Alexander Hamilton, because it is quite compelling.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's, it's unfortunate. So many people, so many historical figures get pigeonholed based off of one or two things, right? And that's all they're remembered for. Um, some folks some of the worst in history, maybe they deserve it, right? And others that had a mountain of good, and maybe there were a couple of things that were that they got attributed to on that, diminishes what they did. Or unfortunately, they might have done a mountain of good, and a couple of things that they were tangentially attached to ends up following them into the annals of history. But no, I love that. I appreciate having this conversation, because a lot of the conversations that are had nowadays are so charged. They're so
Yeah.
heavy, and there's a ton of preconceived notions, right? That
Yes.
fuel them. So, but with that, I want to say thank you. I appreciate you taking the time.
Thank,
Um,
thank you. Well, first of all, you're welcome,
yeah.
but also thank you. It was absolutely my pleasure. I really enjoyed our time together, Matt.
Awesome. I would implore anyone who's watching this, who's made it to the end, to subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you're more of a reader, there is Brian's full written profile available on the Agents and Brokers Interest Group website. So if you just look up Agent and Broker Interest Group, CPCU Society, Google it or whatever, it'll come up as the first hit. And the last thing I would say is, if you're a LinkedIn person, feel free to look up Brian. You are on LinkedIn, right, Brian?
I am.
Okay. Yeah, feel free to connect to Brian.
I am temporarily off of Facebook right now. I just couldn't stand
I don't blame you. I don't blame you. But definitely look up Brian on LinkedIn. And also, the CPCU Agents and Brokers Interest Group has a profile on LinkedIn. So you just look up first name CPCU, last name ABIG, and I'll get you there. And this stuff will be posted on there too. So thank you very much, Brian. I appreciate it, and hopefully you have a good rest of your day.
Thank you, Matt. Same for you. Stay safe and healthy.
Will do.